All right, boys, today is the Fed meeting, and yesterday Bitcoin was already starting to pump. So it looks like everybody wants to know if this is the beginning and we're getting ready to explode back to new all time highs. As I said, yesterday Bitcoin was already starting to pump, and right now it's sitting at about $97,000 roughly. And we haven't been at these levels since all the way back about 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, it looks like Bitcoin has not made a new high or a higher high, and it actually looks to be a lower high, which means that if it doesn't start to pump today after the Fed meeting on some kind of dovish news, then unfortunately this might be a sign that we're going to continue to the downside some more. Currently, it looks like there's a 97.7% chance that they're going to continue with the pause, and it looks like the probability that they're going to have another pause or continue with the pause some more in the next meeting on June 18th is about 71% now, with it being only 68% yesterday. So the probability that we're going to see the pause and we're not going to be seeing a cut is on the rise, and everybody's going to be paying attention to what the Fed or Jerome Powell actually has to say in the meeting after the decision. And until we start to see Donald Trump doing some kind of a trade deal with China, I think the narrative that tariffs are actually inflationary is going to continue to see the Fed keeping rates pretty much right exactly where they're at, because obviously Jerome doesn't want inflation to come back. And if he does get ready to cut rates and then Donald Trump actually gets these tariffs out of the way, then that could cause inflation to come roaring back. And that obviously won't look good for Jerome Powell or his legacy. The good news is, though, that we recently got an announcement that the US and China are supposed to hold icebreaker trade talks in Geneva on Saturday. And while this isn't going to be happening in time, obviously, for today's Fed meeting, it could be a good sign that we're going to be seeing some kind of a deal being worked out. And then maybe the Fed can start looking forward to actually doing some cuts in the future. This is going to be the very first talk, though, and honestly, I'm not expecting the tariffs to be cut. Maybe they're going to be paused again or something like that. And in that case, maybe Bitcoin can continue to the upside. But if any kind of bad news comes out of this, then it's probably not going to be too great for the price. And as you know, the markets hate one thing above all others, and that is uncertainty. A lot of people were expecting that maybe we're going to be getting some really great legislation being put forward for stablecoins and maybe even for other cryptocurrencies that could be a boon for the market. But now we're starting to get that uncertainty coming back in with the House Democrats storming out of the cryptocurrency hearing alleging Trump corruption. This is stemming from the possibility that there's a lot of foreign investors or people who are trying to manipulate the decisions that Donald Trump is making, actually giving him money through things like the Donald Trump coin. And the government does have all kinds of rules about donations and giving money to politicians because it can influence their decision making. But it looks like some of these altcoins, including obviously Trump coin, are making a back door for people to be able to actually sit down and talk to Donald Trump or to otherwise influence the decisions that he's going to be making. This isn't a very good look, and I don't think that the Democrats are going to be trying to put through any kind of positive crypto legislation that can help him out with that process. And while I am generally supportive of Donald Trump, I really don't think that this is the best look, honestly. And in my opinion, it would probably be better if he could actually just focus on the legislation and make America the crypto capital of the world like he promised, instead of just trying to pump his own tokens. As I've said many times in the past, cryptocurrency is going to be a partisan issue. And with Donald Trump being so pro crypto and having his Freedom Financial or whatever it's called, where his kids are actually making their own cryptocurrency businesses at this point, it looks like the Democrats are going to be going against anything, any kind of ventures that Donald Trump is invested in or involved in whatsoever. And with crypto being one of them, I guess they're going to be against crypto too. This obviously isn't good for you and me and our wallets, but maybe with Donald Trump being more focused on things like dealing with Russia and China and hopefully trying to put these wars to an end, maybe he won't have so much time to talk about crypto in the meantime, and the Democrats can come together on maybe some kind of a bipartisan issue here and get some of these bills put forward that are going to really make a good difference in the cryptocurrency space. It says here House Democrats led by Representative Maxine Waters walked out of a joint hearing of the Agricultural and Financial Services Committees within seconds of Crypto Subcommittee Chairman Representative Byron Steele, Republican of Wisconsin, calling the meeting to order. Waters rose to object. She was asked multiple times to explain her objection and eventually said it was because of the corruption of the president and his ownership of the crypto and oversight of all the agencies. So apparently, him just even owning any kind of crypto is going to make them unwilling to cooperate with any kind of committees or any kind of bills that are being suggested. And it goes on to say that the Congresswoman also expressed concerns about the Trump's family involvement in crypto, including his son's launch of a Bitcoin mining company. So, as I said, the Trump family's ventures into crypto are throwing cold water on this whole possibility, really, of us getting any kind of pro crypto legislation. And this is really putting a damper on the possibility of us getting this bill known as the Genius Act actually passed through, which would create a regulatory framework for stablecoins, according to this article on CBS, with the bill already advancing out of the Senate Banking Committee in March with bipartisan backing. It looks like that bipartisan backing is starting to crumble, and as it says, it has since bled Democratic support amid concerns about President Trump and his family business ventures into cryptocurrency. So, this is just causing more uncertainty and doubt. And even though stablecoins are obviously stable and they don't go up and down in value, it would legitimize the whole cryptocurrency space, and I'm sure it would be a boon for the whole industry. But until we can actually get some bipartisan decisions here, it looks like progress is going to continue to flounder, and we might not actually see anything coming forward for quite a few months. In positive news for individual states, though, it looks like New Hampshire is the first to actually sign a bill into law allowing the state to invest in Bitcoin. A lot of people are saying that this is the first state in the United States to authorize a Bitcoin strategic reserve, but really they just made a law to actually make it possible for them to invest in Bitcoin, but there hasn't been a decision to put any money into it or actually buy any Bitcoin. So until we see some kind of announcement that they're buying or already have bought, I don't really know if this is going to be as much of a boon as people are expecting it to be. But it is really great to see that some states are trying to follow the federal example of adopting a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and that means that other states are probably going to follow as well. There are a few states that are getting pretty close, with Arizona reaching, I guess, their final step according to this chart right here. North Carolina, Texas, and Alabama are also getting pretty close. And if we start to see some of these getting to the finish line, then I'm sure we're going to see more states following. But just like what happened with Donald Trump announcing a Bitcoin strategic reserve, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be buying any Bitcoin or any kind of cryptocurrencies. It just means, I guess, that they're not going to be selling any. A lot of people were expecting the US government to buy like 1 million Bitcoin or something crazy like that, but that has yet to come to fruition. And just because they start passing bills that allow that kind of thing to happen, it doesn't mean that they're actually going to be buying anything. And until they do, I don't think there's anything here that's actually going to be pushing Bitcoin to the upside, except for maybe just a little bit of positive sentiment, which is currently being outweighed by all of the uncertainty around the Genius Act and even things like the war in India and Pakistan that looks like it's starting to kick off. In my opinion, both of them could just nuke each other into oblivion for all I care. But there is some fear that China and Russia and maybe even the US are going to get involved because of things like BRICS, with the I in BRICS standing for India, obviously. And any kind of fears of World War III are definitely not going to be too great for the global markets, including Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So let's just hope that these tensions don't actually continue heating up. As I've said before, every Fed meeting, usually if it's pumping into the meeting, it's going to be dumping afterwards, and vice versa. And it was looking pretty good until yesterday, I guess. But now, since we're starting to see a little bit of a pump going into the meeting, we're pretty much primed for some kind of a sell off if there's any kind of bad news that comes out of the Fed meeting. And with Donald Trump not reaching a deal with China yet on the tariffs, honestly, I don't expect Jerome Powell to say anything dovish or to indicate that he's getting ready for a pause yet. Because as I said, the tariffs are seen as being inflationary, and that probably means that Jerome Powell is going to be more hawkish than anything, and he doesn't want to front run some kind of a decision for these tariffs to be put away, because especially if that happens just a couple of days after he actually does lower interest rates or indicates that he's going to, then it could probably send inflation going back to the upside. And if the past is any kind of indication, the Fed would rather be behind schedule instead of actually doing things on time. As I said, Bitcoin does look like it's putting in a lower high right here, and the RSI is going to the downside. And with the RSI standing for the relative strength index, that means that the price strength is actually on the decline. Plus, if I go over here and look at the daily chart, unless this actually turns out to go to the upside from here, it looks like we've got a bearish divergence on the RSI with a lower high forming here on the price and a higher high being put in on the RSI. And with all of this uncertainty swirling around the markets, I still feel like we're probably going to be going to the downside or maybe even sideways for a little bit longer until we see some kind of a really great catalyst or bullish news or maybe some kind of uncertainty being removed from the markets. And we're just having a little bit of trouble trying to break through this previous level of support that is going to be resistance on the way back towards all time highs again. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is Donald Trump going to reach some kind of a trade deal with China and maybe remove that uncertainty from the market, sending us back to the upside? Or is all of this confusion and uncertainty and doubt going to continue having downward pressure or maybe even make us continue trading sideways? Either way, thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. But most importantly, don't forget to do only good every day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.